All right, welcome back into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. Appreciate everybody for joining us. I'm Justin Hokanson. With me, as always, Mr. Alan Head. What's up, dude?
What's up, buddy? How we doing today?
We're good, man. Good. Getting ready for Atlanta. How about you?
Yeah, well, I'm not getting ready for Atlanta, but I'm getting ready to watch it next weekend. But excited to discuss it today. Obviously, two games, and Auburn is in the Sweet 16, so a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, they are. Real quick, shout out to our show sponsor, Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn, right there on Magnolia Avenue, next to Taco Mama. Go give them a shout. Open 4 to 7. 4 to 7 is our happy hour. They're open Sundays 12 to 5. So go check them out. Make a great old fashioned, some other good stuff. If you're in there and you see Hunter's the owner, if you ever see him in there, tell him that you're a member of AuburnLive.com. He'll appreciate that. Appreciate them. And go hit up Session when you're in town for baseball or something like that going on. Now that the weather's starting to change, nice weather, man. But yeah, appreciate them. Okay, let's talk about Auburn to the Sweet 16. Takes care of business against Alabama State. Beat Creighton in the second round. I think obviously the storyline was Stephen Pearl and Dylan Cardwell and their comments after the Alabama State game. That dominated. It was, I don't remember. Every now and then, Bruce Pearl will come out and will challenge the team a little bit, but not to that extreme that I can remember. He'll come out and say, he'll come out and be matter of fact, but he won't be quite as direct and fired up as Dylan and Steven were. But honestly, it's not that surprising. Just to have, having been around those guys for years now, Dylan and Steven, I'm just not surprised at all. And Dylan's really gotten more vocal, really since, I think last year, but I saw Dylan even going back to the summer. Dylan kind of took it to another level in terms of being vocal. I think he's a serious, he jokes around, but he's serious about like trying to do the right thing, play basketball, not be out there to clown around. You know what I mean? And really going back to the summer after the Yale loss and after all those shenanigans, and then even when they were getting back into, I wish some people could have been at some early summer practices. And Dylan was like one of the first ones to just, he was fed up then. Like he was fed up then about like, we just lost to Yale and we're out here and we're whining about the officials again, or whining about calls and a practice in June or whatever. And so hearing him being really vocal, like that, he's been kind of like that all year in practice at times. I've watched him in practice a few times light that team up. So anybody that thinks that what Dylan said in after the Alabama State game is like, I promise you, he said more direct things straight to their face. And then Steven, I think that was good to hear. He's a little bit different than Bruce. Steven hits his tipping point much quicker than Bruce does. And he was like Dylan. He was just kind of fed up. The effort and the energy in the Alabama State game was terrible. And everybody saw it. And those comments post game were what they needed to light the fire. And it carried over into Friday. I kind of wrote in my reaction, like, it's not really, I'm not going to go into details. It's sort of, if the players want to talk about it, whatever, but there's more stuff that happened on Friday in terms of just some internal things that I think helped clear the air, helped get the guys a little bit more locked in. And they responded. They came out and they played really well against Creighton, not perfect. It's hard to play perfect in the NCAA tournament. Other teams fighting for their life. But I thought Auburn played really well. And if not for 12 threes, maybe that game's never really a pressure pack game. I mean, if not for 12 threes, maybe Auburn gets that. Maybe it's a 10-point margin and it hovers 10, 12, 14, 16 all game, if not for the way Creighton shot that ball. So either way, Auburn's on to the Sweet 16. What were your Alabama State? We kind of know what that was. So, like, what was maybe some of your takeaways of, well, I'll tell you what, you can start with, you posted on the board sort of being surprised. I mean, if you want to hit on, being shocked about how they came out against Alabama State, you can. Obviously, they rebounded from that, but I know that was one of the things you posted where you were like, what the heck? I mean, didn't see that coming. But, so, I mean, they rebounded. They made up for it. But talk about whatever you want from Lexington.
No, absolutely. And I think, you're right. I was surprised because coming off of a SEC tournament where I thought that Tennessee game would have had their attention, right? Like they would be dialed in and focused. And then the product that you saw in the first half against Alabama State, and give them credit. Look, Alabama State came out there and they played like a team that had 0 to lose, and they played with a ton of effort and energy. Were beating Auburn to loose balls, and just playing like a team that, that wasn't scared at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And Auburn came out there like the team. They knew they were better than Alabama State. They kind of had that air about it. And, I think they didn't necessarily anticipate Alabama State to play with the energy that they did. In the second half, Auburn dialed it up. You could tell that the intensity level changed at half. Auburn was absolutely the better team, and they played like it in the second half, and they pulled away. And then you saw the comments come from the coaching staff as well as from who I would call Auburn's leader on this team. Now that, I would put Denver Jones in that category as well, and there's a couple of others also that are leaders for this program. Chris Moore is one of those for sure, as far as an example guy. But we all had that coach in Little League, right? That said, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And Dylan, to me, is the epitome of that as a representation of Auburn, is that is who you want in your locker room representing Auburn and representing this basketball team. He stepped forward and called guys out in a moment where they needed to be called out. And it got their attention. And you talked about some of the things about, and again, they can share those internally speaking, maybe to clear the air some, to make sure that everybody knows that in March, you can't afford to play less than at your best from the things you can control standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. The effort and energy standpoint. You're going to miss shots. You're going to make fouls. You're going to do things you wish you hadn't done, but you can always control your energy and your effort. And you saw such a difference in that game from start to finish against Creighton. And you talked about it. You posted this on the board. It just felt different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like for you to expound on that. But you could tell in the game the intensity level was different. And for anybody that has any questions about how good Creighton is or isn't, we're recording this on Sunday, it may not post until Monday, but you just watch UConn versus Florida. That same Creighton team beat UConn not once, but twice this past year. So this isn't a slouch. And I would tell you that the committee did no one seed any favors with the 8 or 9 seeds that they're going to be competing against in the second round.
For real.
Creighton, Gonzaga, UConn, Baylor, all teams that have won national championships or played for one. Those are programs with big-time head coaches. So they were really good. Maybe Creighton hasn't played for a national championship, but they've been in the Elite 8.
Yeah.
But a really good coach, really good program, a lot of respect for them and how they conducted themselves and the way they played space and pace in the first half against Auburn. And like you talked about, if those three-pointers don't go down for them, and some of them weren't, they weren't on design plays. I felt really kind of encouraged at the half against Creighton because I felt like a lot of their threes were off scramble. Like there was just like a tip, and then, they get a three-point shot, and credit them for knocking it down. But it wasn't something where Auburn was just completely getting outclassed. You could tell they were in that game. And if they could, cut the hose off just a little bit, and that's what they did. They slowed them down behind the three-point line and ran them off. And then they attacked the drop coverage a lot better in the second half. We discussed it on our last podcast about how Auburn could not fall in love with the jump shot in this tournament, and they had to get downhill and turn the corner and get to the cup a little bit more. You saw Tahad Pettiford in the second half really start to assert himself, give Chad Baker-Mazara a lot of credit. They had a really good mismatch for him, and he took advantage of it until he unfortunately took a knee in the side. Dylan's defense on, Creighton's big man, who, give that guy credit. He's more of a handful than I would have ever anticipated, and defensively and offensively, because he was a load for Janai. And if it's not for Dylan, he probably scores more in that game. But just his ability to stand his ground, to wall him off, and be able to play man-to-man and switch onto their guards, I thought set the tone for Auburn for who they were going to be that night. And so just really proud of this team and their effort, how they played, and to go from kind of one extreme in one half to another game and how they played from start to finish. It just shows you what this team is capable of, their pedigree. And it, I think, hopefully gave them some confidence about this is the level that we can play at. This is the level we expect to play at. And now you get an opportunity to showcase that in Atlanta in front of basically what should be a home crowd for you against a tough and physical Michigan team, but a team that you can beat. But again, proud of the guys for the way they responded. Proud to see Auburn represented in that way, and proud to see a leader in Dylan Cardwell step forward and set the tone for this team and say enough is enough. This will not be accepted anymore, and we're going to play better basketball moving forward.
Yeah, it was an interesting game. I mean, because you had, Creighton hit 12 threes. I mean, I would say, three off the top of my head were ones where you just go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
One was Kyle Brenner banking in from the wing. One was it might have been McAndrew in the corner with a guy right on him, and he just pulled it. I mean, I almost think it surprised. Maybe it was Denver. I almost think it surprised Denver because Denver's standing right in front of him. That guy just had the height. And he just shot. I mean, just shot it. A heck of a shot. And then the one in the second half that kick-started their little spurt to bring them within 7, where he's like fading away, falls down. You're like, that's a hell of a shot. I mean, there's off the top of my head, 3 of them were like, okay. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that? It was an interesting game because Creighton had not lost a game in which they shot that well from 3 all year. And Auburn had not won a game in which they had allowed the opponent to shoot that well from 3. I said at halftime, Auburn had allowed an opponent to hit 9 threes or more on 3 occasions this season. At Duke, Florida at home, at Texas A&M.
Lost all 3.
All losses. And Creighton had 9 at halftime and was leading. And so they bucked that trend. What's crazy is Creighton almost hit the same amount of threes as Florida. Florida scored 91 and Creighton, barely got the 70. It shows you, just kind of everything else. Florida did everything well. I'm kind of with you about kind of how I felt at halftime. I mean, I was looking at it going, Auburn's doing a lot of good things. I'm looking at it going, they're out rebounding. They're not turning it over. And I kind of wrote before the game, I kind of wrote in my projections and my keys to victory, I was like, if Auburn doesn't turn it over, which Creighton doesn't force a lot of turnovers, so Auburn finished with 7, that's almost a couple more than they I was thinking 5. 5 is kind of the number where I wanted Auburn to be. I was like, if Auburn doesn't turn the ball over, which they shouldn't because Creighton doesn't force, and if Auburn doesn't foul a lot, which they shouldn't because Creighton doesn't go to the line a lot. So it's kind of the Auburn not turning the ball over a lot anyway, but Auburn sometimes deals with fouling too much. Well, Creighton doesn't get to the line a lot. So I thought that helped Auburn as long as they would, stick to their stuff. I was like, if they do those 2 things, they're going to have a lot of possessions and they're going to be in pretty good position to win the game. And then Creighton just starts knocking down threes and you're like, okay. I mean, I'm looking at this going, Auburn's doing a bunch of good stuff. They're hustling. The effort's there. They're engaged in the scouting report. Offense, a couple times the offense in the first half I thought looked maybe stagnant for a second. But, I mean, overall, I'm like, I think they're doing a lot of good things. And Creighton's knocking down the threes. The only thing I was worried about was their mental state coming off Alabama State, all of the come to Jesus stuff, and then going out in the first half and feeling like, and walking into the locker room going, we're doing everything what we're supposed to do, and we're still losing. I worried a little bit about some frustration setting in at, hey, are they going to be like Are they going to be super engaged and all this stuff's going well, and they're going to look up and going, how are we still losing? And would that get them frustrated? Would that get them out of their scouting report? Would that get them out of sync a little bit? Would they get annoyed by it? And they didn't. They completely stayed the course, and they stayed. I thought, poised and composed throughout the game. Stayed the course. Creighton only hits 3 threes in the second half, and really, you go back and look. 6 of Creighton's 12 threes happened in the first 10 minutes and 7 seconds. So they only hit 6 in the last 30 minutes. So like, I thought Auburn sort of settled in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it came out second half. Chad had his run, then he gets hurt, and then here comes Denver into Todd, and that's what Auburn can do, man. They've got the guards. It's kind of like the Kentucky game. I mean, they've got the guards that any of them can go on a spurt. Denver can go on a spurt. Tahad can go on a spurt. Chad can. Janai can. Miles can. So to win that game by 12, by the way, we're recording this. Texas is hiring Sean Miller. That's funny.
Wow.
They played in the first 4. It's a good hire.
Very good hire.
Yeah, it was an interesting game. Like Janai scores 8, Miles goes 1 for 8, and you still put up 82. And win going away, and you give up 12 threes. Like there's still there's just kind of shows you still a bunch of things that could have gone even better for Auburn in that game. But I mean, they won basically every category. I mean, 11 offensive rebounds, 19 second chance points, huge, which is, they should have against that Creighton team. Like that Creighton team can shoot. They do a bunch of good things well, but Auburn absolutely had an athletic ability advantage. Yes. And a size advantage. So that's they did what they should have done there. 42 points in the paint. The only number out that was a little bit was assists, but as I noted, Creighton plays the type of defense where they kind of want to funnel you anyway. And so Auburn only had 11 assists on 30 made field goals, which is a lot, by the way, 30. But a lot of that was Tahad and driving and sort of inviting you to drive, and Auburn knocked down a lot of those. 17 assists, that's another one. If I went back and looked right now, that's another one lately that every game that they had allowed a high number of assists, they were losing. I mean, so to allow 17 assists and win, that sort of bucks a little bit of a trend of how Auburn's played this year. Of course, a bunch of those were probably catch and shoot threes. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, I like the energy and effort. I kind of looked at it like I kind of wrote about it a little bit. Listen, Auburn could go to Atlanta and lose to Michigan. Yes. But it felt like, and maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking, but it felt like the Creighton game is possibly a get over the hump game, like a hurdle game. Like I feel like this team had so much pressure. Which is weird. They win at Kentucky and they win the SEC, and you'd be like, oh, they got the title, no more pressure. And maybe they go to A&M, whatever. But then you go to Alabama, you lose, and then now we've lost 2 in a row. Then you go to Nashville, you kind of slop through Ole Miss, credit Ole Miss. You win that weekend. Then you lose to Tennessee. Now you've lost 3 or 4. Yeah, everybody's telling you you've lost 3 or 4, and so I just kind of think some pressure was building on them a little bit, like. And a lot internally. I think there was probably a lot of discussions between players and coaches and stuff about, guys, we got to get back to our winning ways, and we got a lot back in on defense, and we got to and you can start to create a narrative that, like, hey guys, what's wrong with us? Even though publicly the coaches were like, listen, we lost to Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, but you could sort of start to feel of a player like, well, is there something wrong with us? Like, what's going on? So I thought this win was, and then you have Alabama State, and now it's like, okay, maybe something is wrong with us. And so I just thought the Creighton game was not just a big win for right to advance, and like it was a big win for Bruce Pearl. Listen, they lose that game, and you're still not out of the second round since 2019, and all 3 of your SEC regular season championship teams would have not gotten out of the first round. First weekend if you don't beat Creighton. That's not something you want to introduce into the conversation. So they needed it for all those reasons. But the team, I just thought mentally, they needed to get through whatever they were going through, come out, lock in, play well, win, and then be able to exhale for a few days. Like I can easily see a scenario where Auburn comes out and blitzes Michigan. I can see it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Michigan's good. But you're talking about 9,000 Auburn fans in State Farm, more. I mean, everybody will have their allotment, whatever. 5 days off, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They're going to play Friday, so 5 more days off.
Mm-hmm.
The a little bit of relief about, we're fine, guys. We're fine. We went through some stuff and we won in spite of it. It's kind of like going through a tough game and having a learning experience while also getting a W. You're like, that's the best case, right? We won and we went through some stuff. And I could just easily see them coming out and playing, feeling lighter next Friday, not feeling like the weight of the world is on them. Like I can't lose this game. We got to get through the first weekend.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with us? All this stuff I feel like is gone now. And they got a chance Friday to come out and just take a breath. Like, we're in the Sweet 16. We're in Atlanta. We're going to be in front of thousands of our fans. And maybe they can come out a little bit lighter and a little bit freer, and play some good basketball. So we'll see. Maybe it doesn't go their way. Maybe shots don't fall. But I really think the Creighton game could be a sort of get over the hump type game for players and coaches, and just, and it's a little psychological, but I just felt like a lot of that was building with them, and it came out, post game Thursday. Like, I felt like that's what that was them finally publicly saying maybe what they were thinking privately, which is like, yeah, we do kind of need to get our shit together,
Right. No, I think there's a lot of validity to what you're saying, and psychology in sports is a real thing. I think the biggest thing for me that I've noticed post Kentucky is it just felt like Auburn was having a hard time regaining momentum. You obviously go to A&M after you've poured it out emotionally from winning a SEC championship in record fashion, and you get beat, and then you come back home against Alabama with an expectation that you want to beat your in-state rival to end the season on a high note. That doesn't take place, so you lose a little bit more momentum. You go to the SEC tournament. You play a good Ole Miss team, not a great Ole Miss team, and kind of slop through it to a degree. You get a victory. It's not pretty, but you get one, but you don't feel great about it, right? And then you go into Tennessee, like you talked about, and you win a lot of metrics and categories in that game. And yet, probably in some of the most pivotal ones, specifically foul shooting and you committing fouls, it's heavily tilted in the opponent's favor. And you just feel like, all right, we need something to make us feel right.
Yeah.
And that didn't come in Alabama State. And even if Auburn had played well, how much would you have taken out of that if Auburn beats them by 30 and looks great, right? You're just inferior opponent, right?
And to your point, maybe that's the blessing of that game. If they smoke Alabama State, does anything that gets addressed Thursday night, Friday, does any of that get addressed?
No.
If they smoke Alabama State and win by 27 points going away, none of that gets addressed. Festering, like, clearly something deeper needed to be addressed that got addressed. The deeper stuff doesn't get addressed if Alabama State doesn't come out there and play well, and Auburn does their thing and wins, and Alabama State doesn't push them. None of that stuff gets addressed.
No, I agree. And you need adversity. You need to kind of be punched in the face some and have to take a hard look at who are we right now and what do we want to accomplish. And I think you got that from Alabama State, and then you played a quality. And when I mean quality, I think Creighton was it was definitely not seated correctly. They're a good basketball program. I have a lot of respect for Big East basketball. Now, it wasn't a banner year for them by any means, watching St. John's, Creighton, and UConn, probably all flagship schools for that conference, lose this weekend. But all the same, it's still a very good basketball conference. So I think Auburn matched up well with a really good team, and they got to feel good about themselves, and reminds them, again, this is kind of what happened coming post Maui, right? They got a lot of confidence going to Maui and beating teams of the caliber that they played against. beating an Iowa State, beating North Carolina. And that was obviously more about a brand thing than it was about the actual team that they played against. We didn't know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then Memphis, who's another tournament team. And I mean, you beat every one of those teams minus Iowa State, double digits. That was a big deal winning the Houston game. That was huge momentum for this team to believe in themselves when we get in these tight moments. We have what it takes to win the game, and they needed to remind themselves of that. And getting down in the first half and fighting back through that and watching a freshman who's going to be a star next year, should he return to Auburn, and I think all expectation that he is, and Tahad Pettiford, watching the stage not be too big for him in that moment, that was big. That was big. Watching him split double teams, which is not easy, in a way, probably, and I'm going to take people back here a little bit and may even be speaking about somebody who if you're watching this and you're under the age of 30, you won't even know who this is, but watching him split doubles like Mark Price used to, or in today's game, Steph Curry, that's Steph's deal. He can split a double better than anybody. But watching him do that and then hit that runner in the lane, it gives me a lot of confidence about Auburn's backcourt moving forward, and having somebody there that can control the flow of a game. Now, I do think that part of that was the way Creighton plays defense, right? And it might be different against a different opponent. But guard play is so huge. And you saw Janai struggle, and that's going to happen in this tournament. He's not going to be perfect every night. He is your best player, but he's not going to be perfect. And you're going to have other guys pick you up. And last night you had, as you talked about, Denver, Tahad, Chad all brought their A game. And you needed to see that from Chad. You really needed to see that from Chad because, again, we talked about it. He's a catalyst for this team. And when he's on and he's engaged, he is an absolute difference maker because he's a mismatch for a lot of guys. He sees the game in a different way. And again, when he's locked in and his energy is channeled in a positive way, he is a lightning bolt for this team, and he lifts the ceiling. So hopefully that will continue. And you're right, and they've got a reason to be engaged. There are a lot of storylines, and I know we're not going to talk about it a lot because we're going to save that for another show, teasing this for you guys. But moving into Michigan, the Trey Donaldson factor, the Danny Wolf factor, Burnett being involved. You talked about some of this. And then obviously they have a phenomenal head coach who's been to a Final Four just like Bruce in Dusty May. So there's a lot here for Auburn to stay engaged with. And I think from this point moving forward, if you get the focus that they had against Creighton, win, lose, or draw, I think Auburn fans are going to be able to walk away from this and realize, like, okay, maybe Auburn just got beat by a better team. But it wasn't because we were playing in a lackluster fashion. But there's a reason for this team to stay engaged because you got a quality opponent in front of you, and it's probably going to be Michigan State after that, and Tom Izzo in that group. So there's no letdown from here moving forward. We talked about it, round of 32 moving up. It's going to be tough. It only gets tougher. And I like the fact you get those in Atlanta. And as Charles Barkley said, we need all those Shetland ponies to get us to San Antonio. So a lot of momentum here to be seized, a lot gained against Creighton. And I think you're right about the psychology part of it, Justin. You needed that one. You needed it for momentum. You needed it to remind yourself of who you are, and you needed it to flush some of probably the bad taste in your mouth and maybe some of what had circulated in the locker room some, and get that all out in the open, discussed, and move forward from. And I think it can be a healing point and a catalyst for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I was looking at Chad. I mean, he only played 21 minutes, 17 points in 21 minutes because he ended up looked like he came back in for a minute, then he went back out, and I think at that point maybe Auburn felt like they were in a decent spot, and so no need to push it. I think he probably could have gone if he absolutely needed to. He was emotional on the sideline. His mom was there. And who knows? Let's just be real. Chad can get emotional at the drop of a hat. So, but his mom was there. He probably wanted to be out there, a little banged up. Could have been still emotional from the day before. I mean, maybe some stuff happened that he sort of got through, and maybe he's thinking about sort of persevering through the last 24, 48 hours. But, that when you see Chad, like that's the side of Chad. And you saw the clip. They're chanting, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, and you see Bruce doing the Maui vibes thing where he's
Mhm.
walking down, he's clapping, and he walks down, he gives Chad a hug, gives Chad a kiss on the cheek. Um, I thought that was a great moment. I mean, number one for Chad, I get it, right? Like he is such a you remember those Sour Patch Kid commercials?
Yes, dude.
That
Yes.
that's Chad. He does something, you're like, it just pisses you off, and then you're like, oh man, I love it. But you just got that. That's why BP has so much empathy for Chad. Like he gets Chad, and I
Yes.
think a lot of fans now are probably to the point where you kind of sort of get him. I mean, I wrote about him with his dad, and he's so frustrating when like the Alabama game was unacceptable. That was a huge mistake. Um, but he's got a good heart. He's trying. He just is a different cat. He's wired a little differently. And so it was good. Like, I mean, I watched that stuff. I thought Nashville, I thought he was really good. I thought he was really on point. And then Lexington, same thing. Like I thought Chad was great. I mean, go watch that Creighton game. I mean, makes a bucket. Like, yeah, he got fired up after one of the N1s, but he's like, hits a bucket through through the lane, and he's locked in.
Yep.
He's backing up, he's playing defense. He doesn't hit a runner and look at the bench and like he's not, he wasn't doing all that stuff to fire himself up. Like he was just playing basketball. And he was locked in.
Yes.
That's the good stuff you want to see from uh from Chad and even Janai. I mean, even Janai in the game against Creighton. I mean, he struggled offensively. Thought he was maybe rushed a few shots on offense, maybe thinking he had to rush something to get a shot off, and short armed a couple things.
Yeah.
Was really good on the boards. I thought he blocked out really well, boxed out Kalkbrenner a few times really, really well, got 12 boards. Still 0 for 2 from the line. Like, geez, man, he's got maybe he's overthinking that now. But even watching his sort of demeanor and stuff, like, I thought he was good. I mean, I thought he, yeah. I mean, like even when things were tough offensively, I thought Janai was just out there trying to do his job. And could he play a little better offensively? Sure. 4 of 13, not great. But I didn't see bad body. I didn't see him going like, well, I'm not getting mine. This sucks. I didn't see that. I saw a guy trying to do his job, box out a 7-footer, rebound, go put a butt on. I thought some of the good stuff they did, putting a butt on Kalkbrenner and allowing then, to drive and sort of take him out of the lane. I thought Janai could have played better offensively, short arm some shots. Yes, all that. But in terms of, his attitude and demeanor after Stephen Pearl called him out and called Chad out, I thought Janai was locked in. Watch Janai celebrate when Dylan dunks on Kalkbrenner and stuff. Watch Jakai's demeanor when Dylan makes that dunk. When you go watch the replay, watch Jakai on the court like flexing for Dylan, like super pumped up. Watch Jakai on the bench put an arm around Chad.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure what the future holds for Jakai exactly, but I feel like I've seen a little bit of over the last 3 weeks, a month. I feel like I've seen him be pretty good. I mean, in practice and on the bench, I don't know what's going to happen exactly, but I think he's done a pretty good job of being a good teammate the last handful of weeks. But I absolutely called Tahad, by the way. I literally told the board, I'm like, listen, y'all can bet against him. I'm not. I said, literally said I'd bet on a bounce back. And he had 39 points and 11 rebounds in 2 games. By the way, how crazy is it? He set new career high in rebounds in both the games. So Alabama State, he set a career high with 5 rebounds, and then he gets 6 the next day or 2 days later against Creighton. That just shows you, I think, how active he was and how, go down there and use your athletic ability, go up and rebound. Dude, let me tell you something. Go back to the summer, go back to the beginning of the season. The thought of Tahad Pettiford getting 5 rebounds, you'd be like, no shot. That dude, he like, that was one of his weaknesses. He's gotten so much better at defending. He's
Yes.
gotten so much better at sticking his nose down there and trying to go use his leaping ability and grab a couple of boards. That was not his thing when he got here, even the beginning of the season. They were demanding, like, get down there, defend, get down there and get a rebound, box somebody out, do something. He has gotten, I thought, like that. I think that's a very much a forgotten or overlooked part for Tahad this year. I think those two elements he's gotten a lot better at, and his energy and effort is a lot better, especially on the defensive end. Like, he's moving his feet and staying in front of people, I think, really well. And he
Yeah.
was not there at the beginning of the season. So that was good, man. I mean, I thought it was a good Chase the Ashworth, man. He's a good player. It was funny. Denver Jones had a funny quote after they asked him, they said, Greg McDermott said the day before, whoever guards Ashworth is going to be tired. Are you tired? He's like, I'm not going to lie. I'm tired. I'm tired.
Yeah, he admitted to it.
Yeah. Well, that guy just runs. He's like, he's never full speed. It's just like 80% always. He's just moving around circles, around screens. But it's good. I mean, Auburn got up 14, one little bad spurt. Janai ill-advised three.
Yes.
They hit one of the ridiculous threes I'm talking about, cuts it to 11. Then Auburn goes down, has a bad offensive possession, doesn't get a shot off or gets one off at the shot clock. They go down, get a bucket. Kalkbrenner. Now it's 9. Then you do something and they go get a bucket and it's 7. It was just like a minute. It was about a 2-minute stretch where Auburn they didn't play. 2-minute stretch, made it 7, and then they went timeout, got their stuff together, and then pushed it back out and didn't let it get closer to 7, which was good. You don't want that thing being, if it gets 3 or 4, you get some real pressure building. But other than that, man, I mean, gosh, the contributions, it was the first time all year. So like after every game, I'll do the brief thoughts and grades, and I generally pick 3 guys as top performers. It's based on their efficiency and their game score based on the analytics. And if it's like a tie, I'll maybe look at their box plus minus rating or whatever. There were 5 dudes. I had to pick 5 dudes after the Creighton game because they were that close together. Denver, Tahad, Chaney, Dillon, Chad.
Yeah.
Like all 5, I was like, they all have got to get, because it was like all their efficiency numbers were pretty similar. Dillon's box, his literal box score plus minus was plus 24. His let me get to his rating. I generally do go by rating because sometimes the box plus minus, just the literal number, is misleading because like one of the games that, like the Vanderbilt game, Chris Moore played like 8 minutes and was like plus 17. Well, they started the game 15-0. I mean, and he didn't make a shot. So sometimes, but yeah, let's see. Yeah, Dillon's box plus minus rating was 19.2, almost 20. So like he was just an absolute difference maker.
Yes.
Chad was 15, Denver was 10. Miles is really the only guy that didn't play well offensively. I mean, he struggled. But I thought he gave some good effort on defense, picked up some fouls. Chaney back at it on the boards. I mean, now you look back, he had 7 against Ole Miss. He had 8 yesterday. I don't know what his rebounding numbers were against Alabama State, but you're starting to see him kind of find his rhythm again, which is
big, yeah.
Good to see. And the other thing about that Creighton game was you win that game with no Chris Moore. Now, you might say, well, who Chris Moore? I mean, Chris Moore can give you anywhere from 4 to 10 minutes depending on how things go. He's a physical player. He does the right things on defense. I mean, either way, it's a body that's a handful of minutes that weren't picked up. So Chad only plays 20 because of the hip injury. So now you're down no Chris. Chad only plays 20, so he's about 10 under what he'd play. And then Dillon, I think, ended up with 20, had cramps towards the end of the game. But, I mean, at the end of the game, you had no Semo, no Dillon, no Chad. And they still held firm and actually extended. I mean, Chad went on that run, and when Chad went out, they grew the lead. They kept going. So that was I thought those were some good signs there. Some guys not even being available, and they still were able to handle that. So, I mean, they accomplished what they needed to. 2-0, got out of Lexington, and now it's sort of a new season. I mean, I like the way Bruce Pearl talks about it. He's like, it's a 5-team tournament. We went to Lexington, and it's us, and it's Alabama State, and it's Creighton and Louisville, and I guess it was St. Francis, but whatever. It's it's a little 4-team tournament. Win it. Now you got 5 days off. Now you got another little 4-team tournament where it's going to be Auburn, Michigan, Ole Miss, and I would assume Michigan State. We don't know, but let's just assume that. So they accomplished what they needed to get to the second round. It's only their 7th or 6th Sweet 16 ever. 6th Sweet 16 ever.
Yes.
It's crazy. And I don't think they've been to but 3 or 4 Elite Eights, if not, maybe 3.
I think it's 3. I think 2 under Sonny because Cliff never got to 1. He made the Sweet 16 twice, but never an Elite Eight. But 2 under Sonny, 1 under Bruce, obviously, with his Final Four run. And so this is your chance to have your 4th.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. But they got through it. I mean, that's kind of all that matters. They got through it healthy. I don't know if there's anything else that really stood out. I mean, there's really Kalkbrenner got his in the end. I thought Kalkbrenner kind of had a little run of some points when Auburn got up by about 10. He had a run of a lot of his points came when I think Auburn was really, really out there on the line. Once Auburn got up 10, they were like, we're not giving up threes. And he got some good position down low and scored some buckets. I was really impressed with the defense on Jemiah Neal. Watching that guy against Louisville, I was like, that's a problem.
Yes.
And he got shut down. Whether it was Chad, whether it was
Tahad
or Miles or Tahad even manned him up and played physical with him. I thought that was going to be an issue. That guy had, wingspan, athletic ability, and he did nothing. The kid who hit 4 first half at McAndrew, I don't think he hit 1 in the second half.
No, he
so everything kind of came back down to earth in the second half of that game. And you're right about Creighton. I mean, beat UConn twice, beat St. John's, went to Alabama, lost by 6 or 7.
Yeah, took him to the wire.
Played A&M on a neutral court, lost by 4. And then had a close loss to St. John's. So a team that has clearly showed that they could kind of play with anybody. And Auburn pulled it out. Now, man, you come home, you got 5 days, and you'll pop over to Atlanta on probably Thursday, I would imagine, Thursday morning, maybe Wednesday night. But if you're not flying, I don't know why they wouldn't go over Thursday morning. But either way, simple travel now, and a place that they have played 4 straight years. The Jabari team. The Jabari team destroyed Nebraska.
Yes.
The team, of course, this year they destroyed Ohio State. Last year's team destroyed Indiana. And then maybe they didn't play maybe they had a year off. No, they had to have played. The Jabari team played. Did Janai's first year, did they play over there?
I'm about to look right now.
I'm feeling like maybe I missed one, or maybe they took a year off from playing in that thing.
That would have been the 22-23 team.
Yeah.
Did they play Memphis there?
Oh, they lost. Yeah.
I think they played Memphis there and lost.
That's right. They beat Memphis a few years prior to that. The Sharif team beat Memphis. They beat Memphis. Either way, yeah. So, but they've played 3 Big Ten teams over there, and they've won by a combined 97 points. And they just beat Ohio State, who had a disappointing year, but they beat them like a rented mule. Yeah. So, bottom line is Auburn's going to walk into State Farm with all of the confidence in the world. I mean, all the confidence in the world. They just played there earlier this year. They're going to feel like they're right down the road. There's going to be 10,000 Auburn fans. I mean, I think that place holds 16-ish. Every team gets their allotment. Michigan's got tons of fans, so Michigan will probably have fans in Atlanta potentially anyway. Like Michigan will have a good little section or two. Like they'll have their little group, but I'd say 80% of the other just random tickets are going to be gobbled up by Auburn fans. And I was looking at some of the prices on Saturday night, and whew,
Yeah.
Lord, I'm in the media. I mean, I don't know, unless people get them cheaper. I just popped on StubHub, went to the Friday session, and did one ticket, and it was $700. And I did two tickets, and it was $600 something dollars, and both those are in the upper deck. But I know Auburn fans will want to be there. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to think it's going to be. I mean, I got to think 9,000 Auburn fans are getting in. That's 7,000 other fans. Let's say Michigan brings 2,500. I don't even know if that's too many, but they got so many fans that I feel like maybe. Michigan State's got to travel. Ole Miss, bring a few. I mean, yeah, I feel like Auburn will have what would you take what would be. I mean, Neville's 9,000. So you bring 9,000 Auburn fans in there, and everybody else has got two. You're going to feel it.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I will be excited to see it. I think it is as good an opportunity for Auburn to get back to the Final Four as one could be written. And
Yeah,
again, look, you're going to have to play difficult teams. I think anybody that was hoping for an upset or anything like that, doesn't matter. You're playing a difficult team regardless of who you're going to be matched up against in these games. But home court, proximity to where you're from, where your fan base can travel from, affordability for them to get there, because you don't even really have to travel. That's a day. You know what I mean? That's a day's travel or less.
yeah.
It's 2 hours in the car for people from Auburn.
Dude, I've gotten to Hartsfield in an hour.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
clearly I was breaking the law.
Sure.
And it was 3 a.m, so nobody was on the road.
No.
But I did it.
You've got a ton of Auburn alumni that live there in Atlanta that aren't traveling at all. This is basically in their backyard.
Yeah.
So just I would expect it to be very much an Auburn flavor in Phillips Arena, with an opportunity to play against, again, a quality opponent that Auburn fans will be fired up to face against. I mean, they'd be fired up for anybody, but the Trey Donaldson factor, it adds something to this, right?
Yeah.
The Dusty May part of this adds something to this. Danny Wolf adds something to this. There's, there are going to be things that will be written this week and talked about this week that will have the fan base's attention, and it should have the team's attention as well. I mean, look, you're talking about a really quality opponent, Big Ten opponent, and an opportunity to play in the Sweet 16 on an NBA court. That's a lot of people's dreams coming true right there, right? I mean, those are the things when you're a kid, you kind of envision that if you've ever played ball. To play on the biggest stage in an NBA arena against a team that has the capability of going into the Final Four. I mean, so there's a lot of excitement that's going to be built into this. I think Auburn fans should kind of relish the moment right now of, you just talked about it, Bruce, for just the second time in his 11-year tenure here, getting to the second weekend of the tournament. And again, a huge weight lifted for this team, but probably also for this staff, because I'm sure there was some internal pressure on this coaching staff, and they would never admit to it, and I wouldn't expect them to. But it's got to feel good for them and rewarding for them to be able to get beyond that hump and, to say, okay, exhale, we've met expectation now. Let's just go play ball.
Yeah.
All the other stuff aside, we know what we're capable of. Let's go out here and let's execute and put all these mental hurdles behind us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll have a few days off. I don't know if we'll get to talk to. We may get to talk to Bruce and some players maybe on Tuesday or something. I have no idea, but I would think maybe we get a day since I can't imagine them going over there until they probably bus over Wednesday, because the media stuff will be Thursday. So they may just go ahead and get over there late Wednesday, but it's such an easy little bus ride. So they'll be at home Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, most of Wednesday. So that's pretty nice. And it'll be a short little trip over. So either way, Auburn's on to the Sweet 16, 30 wins, ties the 18-19 Final Four team for the most wins in a single season in the history of the program. So that's relevant. If they can get one more, they'll break a record. So they still got a chance to make some history. They kind of faltered down the stretch regular season wise. Could have set some new regular season records. Didn't. Sort of tied the regular season SEC wins marked at 15 and tied the regular season wins mark at 28 with the Jabari team. And now they're tied with the 18-19 team for overall wins. So we'll see if they can get one more and try to break that record and hold something of their own. And against a schedule that far and away. You look at Sports Reference is where I go and I get a lot of stats and it's good. But it shows you can go to Auburn's history and you can go to strength of schedule and how they rate every single season of strength of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, these things are decimal point close, I mean, you go through the year and it's like one strength of schedule might be rated like a 9 point something and it's a 10 or it's an 8 or it's a 7, whatever. And this team's a 14 something. The second one is 10. So when you're talking about something that's like that close and you're talking about a 4-point differential, it's just not even close. Far and away the toughest schedule they've ever played. And so anyway, congrats to them for winning 30. Pearl's now at 9 SEC, 9 tournament wins. So now he's 2 ahead of Sonny Smith all time. So Pearl's got the most tournament wins for an Auburn head coach. And so, just got to get to the Final Four, I think. I mean, as Bruce said, that's the expectation. So, or actually, he said national championship.
Yes, he did. He didn't shy away from it. He did say it.
Yeah. And that was the right thing to do. I mean, they've accomplished too much. You can't shy away. You can't do everything they did and then go, well, we'll see how it goes, matchups, or because everybody be like, hold up.
Right.
You did too much to not set the bar high. And I'll leave on this. You mentioned something earlier about Houston and Iowa State. Some of those games, even though they weren't playing, lately they hadn't been playing up to that caliber. How nice is it to have that as a benchmark to remember back to if they had never done that? And then let's say they had gone through some struggles at the end of the year. It might be harder to reference back. Like, it might be harder to walk in there and go, guys, we're capable of. Because it's, but to have those, even if it was a couple of months before, to have those, like, that's what you're capable of. That. I don't know, you got to sort of feel that again. And maybe it takes beating another team that quality. Maybe beating Michigan will be like, this is what it takes. This is what we can do. But the benefits of playing a schedule that hard, if you get a couple of those wins, you can then log them and you can remember, not just that you can do it, but you can remember what it takes to win those games. So, all right, we'll come back here in a couple of days. We'll do some kind of preview. We'll try to have something up on Thursday morning, just talking about what Auburn might face what Auburn will face in the Sweet 16, what they might face in the Elite Eight. By then, maybe we have talked to Bruce and some players and all that good stuff, and we'll kind of preview Atlanta a little bit. And then we'll also have I don't know. By the way, Zach, did we keep our bracket? Do we have any idea?
I think we're doing okay. I mean, for the best part of it.
Yeah.
To the best of my memory.
I couldn't remember everything we picked, but anyway, I'd love to revisit how we were doing. Yeah. Okay. Here we can go back and look. Yeah. I think I would love to go back and see how far we are off on some of that stuff. So
I think St. John's is the big stinger for us right now because we had them in the Sweet 16. But look, credit to Calipari for getting that one done.
Physical, man. Arkansas. Really? I mean, you could trace Arkansas back to the Auburn game. They played Auburn well, and from that point, I think they're 7-2.
Yeah, and then I think we had A&M in the Sweet 16 as opposed to Michigan because I think we had UC San Diego upsetting Michigan, and they played Michigan well.
Yeah.
But we didn't have that. Those were the two. But we called the McNeese upset of Clemson. So that was built in there. We had BYU in the Sweet 16. So a lot of things that we picked as from an upset standpoint were there.
Yeah, that's a good team, BYU.
Yeah, they are. Better than I thought at the beginning of the year for sure.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt was another one. Yeah, and that was close. I thought Vanderbilt had that game. You're right, Zach.
And I'm sure we had Missouri.
Yes. Yeah. Should have picked Drake because the way Missouri ended the year, I think I just thought, okay, inferior opponent. Missouri's a better team. They weren't. Drake did a great job. They've got a really good head coach who won't be there probably in another couple of days.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Obviously, at the time we're recording this, we're not sure. SEC's got 4 in the Sweet 16. We're waiting on Kentucky, Alabama, and Ole Miss.
Yes.
So you could sit there with 7. And honestly, I think the SEC's done well. Like Vanderbilt lost to a 7 seed, so you could argue. I mean, they lost to the better team. You could argue. I thought Gonzaga was clearly better than Georgia. That was an unfortunate. Like Georgia was good, probably benefited from the strength of the conference. Gonzaga's legit. Georgia was
Yes.
that was a tough one. Texas blew it, lost a playing game, blew that. Okay, Missouri gets upset. Mississippi State, 50-50. You lose to Baylor. Probably would have liked to seen that one win. So nothing like super disappointing outside of maybe Missouri, but they're not playing that great. But you flip side is Arkansas beats St. John's.
Right. So you picked one up that you didn't anticipate, right?
And that's super impressive. So I think the SEC's done fine. I think now if Bama were to get beat, or if Florida would have gone down,
sure,
then you'd be like, But I don't. I think the SEC's done. I know the Big Ten has a great record, but if the SEC ends up with 7, which would mean Ole Miss is beating who's Ole Miss play? Iowa State.
Iowa State, and again, I think Iowa State is elite defensively, but offensively they're challenged right now. So how they play in this game is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Either way, I think the SEC's has done well so far, even with some of the early round losses. I think some of those were good teams that benefited on the strength of the conference and got in, but maybe weren't quite Gonzaga or maybe quite as good as Baylor on a 1-game thing. But whatever, we'll see. 7 out of 16 would be crazy. 6 out of 16 would be really impressive. And then we'll see what that looks like. The thing is, you're getting to the point now where those 6 could all definitely get to the Elite 8. I mean, you could go from 6 in the 16, you could go 6 in the 8. I mean, because the teams left in the SEC are the best ones. So we'll see. I'm just glad 8M's out. Michigan's good. We'll talk about that, but I think I replied on the board to somebody. I was like, I have no interest in that rematch. I don't want it. I don't want it. I have no interest in that.
No, well, and I think it's even, I will be honest with you, like there's nothing sexy about that game either, right? Like you've just seen it so many times now at this point. And look, because of the matchup with Buzz and everything else, that's obviously why I didn't want it. But there's an appeal to playing somebody outside your conference. There's an appeal in, seeing something new and different. And again, March Madness reminds you why the first weekend of the tournament is maybe the best weekend in all of sports because of the pageantry and the drama and the theater that it creates and the matchups and the upsets and all these high-level coaches that are going against each other. And the underrated part out of all of it, the officiating, which is consistent, unlike what we get in SEC play sometimes. So
it's not good, right? I mean, I don't think I've.
No, I mean, I think the officiating has really been consistent. I think they've called it the same way every game, and you can get a feel as a coach for what they're calling and what they're not. It's not been bad in the slightest. And again, you don't see like a ton of replays and all the other things that chop up a game. They've been really consistent on how they handle that kind of stuff. So it's been fun to watch and fun to see.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back in a couple of days. We'll talk about Atlanta, what we got going on there. We'll talk about Auburn and Michigan, and then potentially what they could face in the Elite 8, but a lot about Auburn, Michigan, and just whatever else is going on. Appreciate everybody joining us. Go to auburnlive.com, subscribe, go to YouTube, subscribe, turn on notifications. $1 right now is the deal at auburnlive.com. It's a March Madness deal. It's also a spring football deal, which spring football starts this week. And I got to bounce with you. I don't even really care. I'm just locked into basketball, and I don't know. Spring football is just kind of an afterthought in my head at this moment, and I don't think I'm probably alone. No. By the way, in that regard. So we'll hop back on next week and chat about all this good stuff. Appreciate everybody for joining us. We'll see you guys next time.